Live from the Washington, D.C. area, it's the Inside Scoop. All the news that our viewers want to know. Now, here's the host.
Welcome to Inside Scoop, Virginia. I'm Bettina Lawton, and we have an interview tonight with Jeremy McPike. He is a new candidate running for the House of Delegates. He is down principally in Prince William County and Fauquier County. It is the 31st House of Delegate district. He is running against an incumbent, and I want to welcome him by Skype. And so, Jeremy, thank you so much for coming in via Skype, the wonders of technology. We're glad that you are here.
Thanks for having me.
So tell us, Jeremy, who are you exactly? And why are you doing this? But importantly, what do you think the voters need to know about who you are?
Sure. Well, my background, first off, I grew up in Prince William in the Dale City area and been here for 38 years. And the last 15 years I've been a volunteer fireman in the community, and helping to really see what goes on that a lot of people really don't see, which is there are really gaps in service to both kids and elderly that a lot of people don't get a chance to experience. And my professional background, I started out in construction as a construction laborer 17 years ago and worked my way up to learn carpentry and plumbing work and to pay for a degree at George Mason University in government, and had an opportunity to manage local construction projects. And I've worked for the City of Alexandria for the last 14 years, and now serve as the Director of General Services there. And so I've had experience in local government over the last decade, which has exposed me to a lot of what the state is doing and frankly not doing.
You actually live down in Dale City?
That's right. I live in Dale City with my wife and 3 girls. Was blessed to marry my friend of 23 years, and we've got 3 beautiful girls.
Okay, so you've got to schlep up to Northern Virginia every day to go to work?
I do. I commute over an hour and 10 minutes each way, so I feel the pain of 95. And any one little incident can mean missing a soccer practice or being late to important events in life, and it's really tough.
Well, I want to note for our viewers that you are running against an incumbent. I wondered really how much he wanted to run for this position, since he actually tried to win the Republican nomination for lieutenant governor, and then had apparently to be convinced to go ahead and run for the House of Delegates. So I always sort of wonder about people's devotion to their job when they decide they're going to try and seek a different political office. But be that as it may, he also, I think, and I wanted to ask you about this, I had read somewhere that he is somehow involved with the Star Scientific Johnny Williams problem that Governor McDonnell is going through. Did I get that right? What's going on in that whole area?
Well, I think it has to do with really the culture of gifting in Richmond. And Scott Lingenfelter is no different from that culture, and he's accepted almost $20,000 in gifts. And I think that's one of the things we fundamentally have to change. We have to put forward ethics reform in Richmond that puts the trust back with the voters. And I think voters have a really hard time hearing about people that have taken trips to Paris and special, box seats at Redskins games for holding their position. Most of us that go to work every day don't get a side benefit for what we do. There's a lot of hardworking people here, and it sort of breaks the public trust, and we need reform in Richmond. You've seen the culture through McDonnell and Cuccinelli and all the way down to Lingenfelter, and we've got to change. I think people at some point get into office and frankly don't realize where they've gotten to and take things for granted, and we've got to change that and hold people accountable.
So part of the gifting that he received was, I think, from the uranium industry, if I recall correctly, and that is an issue that's been down at the House of Delegates. I don't think it applies in your district, but do you have a position on whether or not we ought to allow uranium mining in Virginia?
Well, first off, it absolutely applies. There are roughly 16 to 18 uranium deposits actually in Fauquier County.
Oh.
And they are right in the watershed that goes through Prince William into the Occoquan Reservoir, which is the water supply to Prince William County and Fairfax County. So it impacts this entire region. And this is something I do not support. I think we need to maintain the moratorium on uranium mining. It's simply not proven as of yet with the climate we have in Virginia what the impacts would be. And frankly, I'm not willing to impact our watershed, our water quality, and in fact, the entire region's water quality. That's something we can't afford to do.
Okay. The other thing that I read about your opponent, and I'm not quite sure I'm getting this right, is something about an Agenda 21, which I had thought, based on some of the things I read, was some kind of a UN sustainability program that they put out. But then I read something that your opponent said, and it was very weird. He said it was a radical plan that infringed on American way of life and individual freedoms, and it would erode America's sovereignty. What is that? What's your position on this Agenda 21?
I'm not quite sure I quite understand the bill. That is right. That there was the bill actually stated it was a radical agenda, basically of the United Nations to take over Virginia. You know, I've been in sustainability and green belt building efforts for the last 10 years, and there's been a lot of great jobs and economy that's been built around improving our buildings and building performance. So I'm not sure where this sort of legislation and how that's a priority. I've been to met thousands of voters over the summer, and this has yet to come up as a priority in this district. It, and frankly, is sort of a conspiracy theory that doesn't fit well.
Well, why are you running for office? I mean, Scott Lingenfelter has been there for a really long time. Why are you running?
Well, we've got a lot on the table. The last several years have seen continued cuts in public education and basically a systematic process to undermine hardworking teachers who are trying to do the right thing. We've got to tackle this SOL thing. You know, we hear frustrations from teachers and parents come SOL test time, and we've really got to get folks together to find a better method. We certainly need to have testing and accountability, but rote memorization is not bringing forward the creative thinking to feed our creative economy here in Virginia that we really need for the next generation.
And do you have a position on the Common Core? I know Virginia decided not to go into that. A lot of the other states have, and we decided not to do that. Is that something you think we should relook at, or we need to become more individualized in how we evaluate our teachers and our students and get away from the standardized testing concept?
Well, I think the best thing is Virginia's done over its history is innovate, and we've got a great talent pool here in Virginia. We need to bring some of the best and brightest together to bring those ideas forward and see how we can do it. And it can't be just one measure. It's got to be also how they can critically think, as well as some of the testing. And we've got some great resources here. Let's use them.
Okay. Now you're down in Prince William, and Prince William is sort of known for being sort of anti-immigrant. Where are you on those kinds of issues? I think at one point in time your opponent tried to do a bill to say English would be the official language of Virginia, so which I thought was kind of odd, but it seemed to be sort of along the lines of Prince William and what they were doing. Where do you stand on the whole question of immigration, the enforcement of the various police processes that people say have resulted in profiling, their access to our educational institutions? Where do you stand on all of that?
Well, the one thing that really concerned me out of the dialogue that happened, over the last few years is, frankly, the impacts to the kids. There are so many kids that have been in our school system that are friends in our neighborhoods that gone up through our middle schools and high schools, and they're the ones that are really getting the short end of this. I have a vision of Virginia that, frankly, is inclusive of everyone. And these kids grew up here in America. A lot have been here, from 2 and 3 years old, and splitting up families isn't the right answer. We need a pathway that is inclusive, and that's our history here. We've always found a way to be inclusive and need to strive to make sure that that occurs. While certainly those who have broken the law, there needs to be a process, but from a means to address, I know Congress will be addressing this hopefully in the next 6 months, some reasonable means to allow for a pathway to citizenship. But there are a lot of families here that are doing the right thing. They are paying taxes, and they're working hard, and they're trying to pursue the American dream, and we shouldn't punish people for that.
All right. Let's talk a little bit about health care, because Virginia is, of course, considering, I guess, whether we just sign up for the Medicaid expansion. Where do you stand on all of those kinds of issues, the Affordable Care Act, and whether Virginia is really pursuing that aggressively enough?
I think one of the key things is Virginia has the opportunity to expand Medicaid to over 400,000 Virginians, and as well as create 30,000 jobs. This is something that, personally, my wife is a breast cancer survivor of 4 years, and without insurance, we would have had much different financial choices and healthcare choices on the table. And luckily, we came out healthy and successful through that. But there are a lot of hardworking Virginians trying to do the right things to make ends meet. And to hold this up, while certainly there are reforms that need to be made, we need to focus on patient-centric reforms. What's being held up right now is essentially political banter versus helping Virginia families and creating jobs. That's not the right answer. Those are our federal tax dollars that are on the table. We need to utilize those to help Virginia families first.
Okay. And related to sort of healthcare, what about women's reproductive rights? Where do you stand on those?
I'm certainly pro-choice. Those are some of the most difficult questions that are on the table, and frankly, I want to keep government out of those choices. Those are personal in many different ways, and those are between the individual, their doctor, and their faith. And I don't see a role in government in interfering with those. Those are just too personal, and let's stay out of it.
Would you be in favor of trying to have the TRAP regulations, which are, as I understand it, shutting down almost all of the health clinics, women's health clinics in Virginia? Would you be in favor of trying to have those repealed?
Well, those don't make a lot of sense. I mean, those are highly targeted. I've been in the design and construction field, and to have those highly targeted parking space counts and canopy and sort of nuanced things that don't have any impact whatsoever on healthcare are simply building up barriers, and we shouldn't be building up barriers to access to healthcare. That's just not the right answer.
Okay, well, in the last 30 seconds or so that we have, let's tackle a little tiny question, which is transportation. Since you spend an hour or more each way on transportation, where did you stand on the transportation bill? Would you have supported that? Do you have some ideas for fixing it?
Well, yeah, there are a lot of things to not like about the transportation bill, but the one thing to like is it actually gets Virginia moving forward. Since 1986, we've had declining revenues, and over the last several years, we've had the state basically stealing and taking from the transportation.
Yep. I think we're losing Jeremy because our music has come on, which is telling me that we've got to go to break to the end of the show. So I'm going to thank Jeremy for coming, and Jeremy McPike for the House of Delegates.
There's more than just books at the library.
There's more than just books at the library.
Excuse me.
There's more than just books at the library.
Il y a plus que de livres à la bibliothèque.
Hello. You have a lot of great books here today. There's more than just books at the library.
I know.
There's more than just books at the library.
I don't want to be hooked to a machine.
I want all the medical treatment available to me.
I wouldn't want my family to have to make this decision.
My doctor knows what's best for me.
An advance directive is your life on your terms. Talk with your family. Decide what's right for you. Then put it in writing.
Documenting my wishes today means my family won't have to make heart-wrenching decisions later.
To learn more, visit www.putitinwriting.org.
1,200 American youth run away from their homes every day. The National Runaway Switchboard is here to help. 1-800-RUNAWAY. If you are a runaway, thinking about running away from home, or a parent or guardian concerned about issues facing your child, call us 24 hours a day. 1-800-RUNAWAY. In times of crisis, hope is just a phone call away. 1-800.
materials that can be used to make nuclear weapons are stored in more than 40 countries.
Sometimes protected by just a chain-link fence.
Yet not enough is being done to lock down these materials
before terrorists steal them. Why did we learn all this?
My mother,
my son,
my sister-in-law
were all murdered September 11th.
Help protect America.
Together we can. Please join us.
The stem cell issue is being debated throughout the country. Truth is, most everyone has an opinion, even if they don't know the facts.
Let's stop arguing and start really understanding the potential of stem cell research.
For us and for millions of Americans living with disabilities, get the facts.
Call 1-877-842-3442 for free information from the Stem Cell Research Foundation. That's 1-877-842-3442.
Following the tragic events of September 11th, there have been hundreds of violent attacks against innocent Americans.
Remember what that flag you're waving stands for.
Remember, please stop the hate.
We're stronger when we are united.
Remember what that flag you're waving stands for.
One nation, under God.
Indivisible.
With liberty.
And justice.
For all.
In America, there's either room for everyone, or it's not America.
Don't pick the wrong fight.
Let's keep America land of the free.
Stop the hate.
Planning a home renovation? Put this at the top of your to-do list. Because after 10 years, none of you are protected against tetanus and another potentially fatal disease, diphtheria. A minor injury, such as a cut or a scrape, can put you at risk for a tetanus infection. And while safety gear offers some protection, an up-to-date vaccination called the TD booster is the best insurance against tetanus. So get the TD booster. If it's been 10, do it again.
We're back to the Inside Scoop. Here again, your host.
Welcome to Inside Scoop, Virginia. I'm Bettina Lawton, your host. And tonight I have a wonderful new House of Delegate candidate with me. His name is Monte Johnson. He is running in the 10th House District, which is mostly in Frederick County, I think, or mostly in Loudoun County, then Frederick County, and then Clark County. So we've got 3 different counties involved. His name is Monte Johnson. Monte, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
So I want you to introduce yourself to our viewers. Who are you? And eventually we'll get to why are you running. But first, who are you?
Well, first off, I'm a happily married man. Just celebrated my 3rd anniversary recently. Another thing is I've been living in the Brambleton area for like the last 6 years. I'm a technology consultant for a big consulting firm. And actually outside that, I spend a lot of my time doing community service. Big Brother, Big Sister, Habitat for Humanity, Leukemia Lymphoma Society. I spend a lot of time trying to make the community better.
Okay, now you work for Booz Allen. What do you actually do there? You said you're an IT consultant. What does that actually mean?
I'm a project manager. I actually manage a team basically with Microsoft products, software. So software development mostly.
Okay, and so why are you running for this position? You're running against a guy, I guess this fellow this is his first re-election bid, right?
Yes, correct.
Which I guess this is the best time to try and take him out if the Democrats are going to do that, but why you? Why are you doing it?
Well, like a lot of people in the state of Virginia, I'm a concerned citizen. I see the direction that our state's going, and it saddens me. I've seen a time where the state has been known for leading the way for job creation, for education, transportation. We have wonderful universities. Now we're known for dividing people, attacking. Passing things like transvaginal ultrasound, on the voters' rights. We shouldn't be known for marginalizing people. We should be known for leading the way. Virginia needs to lead again.
So you're not too happy to see us on the Daily Show and Rachel Maddow for the things, at least for the things that we're on him for now.
Correct.
Well, let me ask you about your opponent. Now, I read someplace that he has some connection with Governor McDonnell and this Star Scientific scandal. So what is that? It seems to be catching a lot of Republicans up between Governor McDonnell and Attorney General Cuccinelli. What does your opponent have to do with all this?
Well, I'll just talk the facts because that's all I can really speak to.
Okay.
The main things are he was a deputy counsel to Governor McDonnell. Johnny Williams was someone who had a strong relationship with Governor McDonald and gave him $65,000. As a counsel, I have trouble believing that he would not be aware of that. On top of that, the administration paired Johnny Williams with the Secretary of Health. Now, if your lawyer was not aware of a $65,000 gift in that meeting, he's not doing his due diligence.
Okay. No, that is kind of an interesting set of facts there. Well, let me find out, you've been endorsed by the Virginia Professional Firefighters, the SEIU, the AFL-CIO, the National Organization for Women in NARAL. So certainly some of those lead right into the question on women's health care.
Yes.
So where do you stand on all of that? That's another one of those things that got us on all those late night shows, but you also are a member of what many people believe to be a very conservative church.
That's
so
true.
How does that work? Where do you come down on those issues?
Well, you know, I'm a pro-choice candidate, and I stand by that. I think our government is going into invading privacy. They're regulating on things that we don't need them regulating on. We need them to be focusing on bringing jobs and making people's lives better. Now, in regards to my faith and my church, that is a decision between me and my wife. And actually, I met my wife doing service there, a mission trip. So McLean's been very good to me. I may not agree with everything that they stand for in regards to politics, but I go there to worship, and that's what I'm there for.
Now, where do you stand on things like the TARP regulations, which were the ones that have effectively, as I understand it, shutting down almost all of the women's health care clinics in the state? I think that your opponent voted in favor of them.
Correct,
where
yes.
do you stand? Would you favor, if the Democrats actually take over the Attorney General, Lieutenant Governor, would you favor having those repealed?
No, I would definitely favor having those repealed. I'm definitely against those 100% because women's health, and women do too much in our society for us to attack women's health care. And I think that they need access to that, and I think that's something government really should make sure that's available, yes.
So how does that also then play, sort of staying on the healthcare topic here, in terms of Medicaid expansion is another thing that the House of Delegates has been considering. What's your position on that?
I think we should definitely be leading the way for that, because honestly, we're giving money away to other states if we're not taking advantage of that. And we also need to make sure it's working to the best for the constituents in the state. So I would love to see us take control of an exchange as well.
Okay. Well, let me ask you about education, because I understand that education is one of your big topics that
Yeah.
you're very concerned about.
Yeah.
What are your issues with the education, and what do we need to do?
Well, first off, I'll start locally. Locally in Leesburg, one thing that's concerning me is because we had budget cuts recently. Now we have kids walking almost up to a mile, crossing 4-lane highways to get to school. That's very dangerous, and I think that's something we need to fix for student safety. Another issue, I think, is we can't teach to test. We need our kids to have some creativity. I think that's a big part of intelligence. We have people to be able to think on their feet. That's key in success in real life. Another big part would be also that teachers, when you think about teachers, we don't need them having how I call program initiation fatigue. We need to be able to implement correctly.
Okay. Now, you also, in Loudoun, your teachers tend not to stay, as I recall reading. They tend to have a very short time frame.
Yes,
You
they
sort of
do.
seem to be training them, and then they keep moving on you.
Yes, that is a concern as well, kind of a brain drain where people are just kind of racing to where the pay is. So we need to have pay to be able to keep teachers there, because teachers are a pillar of our society and our community. So I definitely we need to manage that and take care of that.
How do you think that the things like the pre-K type programs, I know when Governor Kane was in office, he really pushed that, and it's been subjected to a lot of budget cuts at the state level. Is that something that you think is important for our students to have at the pre-K experiences?
That is absolutely critical. That's where the separation between the haves and the have-nots begin. If you don't have a strong pre-K, especially when you look at a state like Virginia, where you're trying to get into UVA, William & Mary, Virginia Tech, very elite schools in the country, you need to have that solid head start for your kid so he can ensure to have opportunity to partake in our excellent education.
Okay. And I will note that you did go to William and Mary. You just mentioned it as an elite school, so I thought I should put that plug in there. You have a degree in public policy, right?
Correct, yes.
Okay, so there you go. You got there yourself. But you also have talked about things more broadly than the K through 12. You seem to be advocating that we need to be more holistic and look at vocational training and adult education and all of those types of things.
Yes.
You think the state has a role in that as well?
Yes, because we need a well-trained workforce. And education doesn't stop once you get over 18 or once you get over 22 and you get the degree. You have to continue learning. That's something I've learned in my time working as well. You have to continue getting better and striving, getting certifications, becoming good at what you do, or picking up a skill that is in high demand. So yes, I think those are very important. And also, not everyone's going to go to college. We need to make sure that they're productive in society and do very well.
Right. I know the number of people who have what people would consider to be blue-collar trades, like electricians and plumbers and things. And people, you need them, and they are in high demand.
They are.
They are in very high demand. Well, let's talk transportation, because you're out in Loudoun County. Loudoun County, a lot of those folks don't seem to like the metro. They don't want to pay for the metro coming out to Loudoun County. Where do you stand on those issues?
I am for the Silver Line. I do want to come out there. We need to get cars off the road. We need to have diverse transportation. We can't just put all our eggs into roads. So I'm very adamant for the Silver Line. Now, there are other projects that we do have concern of, like I am against the Bi-County Parkway, or some people may call the North-South Corridor, because I'm concerned about the traffic, I'm concerned about the price. I'm also concerned about communication in general from the state. I think the state needs to do a better job of communicating their projects. So.
Okay, and I read that all the time, and then there's some bridge that your opponent seems to like over the Potomac that would do something, which I was like, really? Okay. I'm assuming that you're not a big fan of this bridge project?
Well, really, to be honest, it's not going to happen. Okay. We need Maryland's buy-in to go over the Potomac. Okay. So that's something that for the foreseeable future I don't see happening.
Okay, I wondered about that, because a bridge, that's like, okay, well, whatever. All right, well then let's talk about what you want to do on this smart development, because I also saw a reference about smart development, and we've got about 30 seconds left. What can you tell me about your position on smart development?
The key to smart development is balancing, because Loudoun's unique in the sense that we still have a lot of open spaces, and that's one reason why a lot of us live there. I mean, for me, I'm originally from Lynchburg area, so Loudoun, in some ways really speaks to me uniquely. But we can't destroy all that and make it look like other parts of the state that maybe we don't want to look like. Maybe we move there for a different reason. So that's the big reason why for smart development is balancing between the transportation and development and the natural resources and the beauty that we have, the character of the county.
Okay, well that's certainly something that I hear a lot about with Loudoun, is that competition of trying to get that done right. Well, I want to thank you for coming up, Monte. I know you had to come all the way up from Leesburg to be here tonight. So thank you so much.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
This is firstgov.gov, where we're obsessed with getting you government information.
Brand new student loan applications on the site, baby. This calls for a celebration. Here's your uncle.
So in the end, it was either take the astronaut gig or come work here. What can I say? Duty called.
Dude, that's my cop.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah. No, I'm pretty sure that's Sam's cop.
Oh, sorry?
Yeah. No. Sam's? No.
Just log on or email us and get what you need.
C, change of address form. That's how it's done. D, driver's license renewal.
E, emailing Social Security information.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Nice, we'll allow it. All right, What are those?
Government surplus cars for auction.
You posted those online last time.
No, you did.
I'm posting them online this time!
For all your government information, firstgov.gov.
Oh, what have we got here? Sometimes you feel tired. You can't seem to lose those extra pounds off your midsection. And your joints hurt when you take the stairs? Well, you're getting older. But I'm happy to say that there's some simple things we can do to keep you happy and healthy for years to come. We can also lower your risk for some serious diseases the older population is often subject to. Proper nutrition is more important than ever. Your body has changed, not as many treats. A basic exercise plan, lots of walks and fresh air, and most importantly, come and see me for twice-yearly checkups to help ensure the best possible quality of life. Now, how does that sound? Good boy.
Improve the quality of life for your elderly pet. Schedule twice-yearly checkups that include preventive care and regular lab work. A message from the veterinary members of the American Animal Hospital Association.
We're back to the Inside Scoop. Here again, your host.
Virginia, I'm Bettina Lawton, your host. And tonight I have with me Jerry Foltz. He is a candidate for the House of Delegates. He is a first-time candidate. He is running against a long-term incumbent who's having his own challenges this year. But it's the 40th House of Delegates district, and we've got a map, and eventually we'll get that up behind me, and you can see that it's kind of a very long, odd-shaped map. I suspect that has to do with some gerrymandering that went on after the last census. But Jerry, I want to welcome you to the show.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm glad to be here.
So I want to give you an opportunity to introduce yourself to our viewers. Who is Jerry Foltz?
I'm a 17-year resident of Centerville, Virginia. I'm pastor in the United Church of Christ, officially retired from full-time, what we call called ministry or permanent ministry. But I continue to minister in many ways. And actually, I see myself in a transition from ministering in the church community to ministering or serving the wider community. And I've always been something of a community activist in the churches I've served, 5 churches altogether in my 44 years of ministry. And this is an extension of how I want to help families in the community with all the pressure on them of all kinds, and we can talk about that. I care about families. I have always done that, so this is more of that.
Now, you also served at the Atlantic region level. You were sort of helping a bunch of, like 40 some odd churches or something.
Yes, 7.5 years I was a regional minister serving in the Central Atlantic Conference, the actual name, mostly Maryland churches, and I was from Maryland, so that was a nice feel to be back in my home state for a while. And I ministered to the 40 churches, their ministers, their pastors, helped them in times of transition and some bumps in the road and negotiating salaries and all kinds of little itty-bitty things, and some of them were pretty critical. There were some trying moments, and we weathered all that, and I retired from that, and my position went away. They had to downsize as it was, so it worked out.
No one could replace you.
Exactly.
Excellent. Now, you also do something with the fire department, right?
Right.
What is that about?
Well, when I came to Centerville in 1996, I came to organize a new congregation in the United Church of Christ, and we looked around for a place to meet to start with, and lo and behold, there was the fire station. This older bingo hall, what we call the Pine Room, was available on Sunday mornings. And so we rented that, started meeting there, and then a few months later, someone suggested I think about being a chaplain for the fire department. I thought, well, that's really interesting. I've been chaplain in hospitals, volunteer chaplain. My father was a charter member of our community volunteer fire department when I was growing up, and I rode the fire engine to fires and that kind of thing. So it spoke to me. And so I've been chaplain for over 16 years with the fire department, Centerville Volunteer Fire Department, which also made me an associate volunteer chaplain with Fairfax County Fire and Rescue, which I'm still active with.
Excellent. Okay. And you did get, you were named Citizens of the Year by the Centerville Historic Foundation in 2011 for some work you and your wife were doing out in that area as well.
Right. And she deserves a little bit more of the credit, but I was glad to stand with her, and I've certainly supported and worked with her in the Immigration Forum, Centerville Immigration Forum. It was started back in 2007, simply to have conversation about immigration issues and concerns and rumors and needs. We met monthly, and then by 3 years ago, we were challenged with the opportunity to start a labor resource center, as we called it. And so after a year of organizing and raising funds and helping the workers draw up their own rules of conduct in English and Spanish, we opened the center. It's been over a year and a half now. Mm-hmm. So that was a part of our award, and we certainly accepted it on behalf of so many other volunteers and organizations and churches and everybody else that was in on it. We couldn't have done it alone, that's for sure.
Well, there were some problems years ago, not that many years ago, with Herndon and immigration. When you were doing this work over in Centerville, did you find the same problems? Was there a lot of resistance to establishing this labor center?
Not as much. There was some, and we really were doing it in response to the experience in Herndon. We even modeled the resource center initially after the Herndon model, which worked really well, but outside of the center itself in Herndon, there was a lot of resistance and even some outside groups that came in and I think caused difficulties, and the town leadership changed. And at the same time in Manassas, there was the kind of restrictions on immigrants, and there was some great unpleasantness, and we did not want any of that to happen in Centerville if we could help it. We were a mixed community, many immigrants. We looked at the census statistics from the year 2000 and saw how the population consisted of quite a large immigrant population, Asian especially, but also Hispanic. And we wanted to be able to work together and build community. That's still our goal with the Immigration Forum, which still is organized. My wife is still president of the board of directors, and the Labor Resource Center is simply its biggest project.
Okay.
Yeah.
So this, why you're running, is sort of to continue your serving? Is that what I understand you to say?
Right. And I want to serve the community, and with the experience of the Immigration Forum, with the goal of building community, that's what I'd like to do. I'd like to help build consensus around any kind of challenge or problem, and not unnecessarily divide community. I find too much divisive politics, and it bothers me, both national and state. And I'd like to be someone who can offer an alternative way to make decisions.
You think that can work down at the House of Delegates? They seem to be pretty animated and confrontational down there.
It seems like it. It's worth a try. It's worth a big try, and I'll give it all I have. I did serve on a school board in New Jersey, elected position for 3 years. It was nonpartisan, but very conflicted.
Yeah, school boards tend to be. I will say that.
And we were so divided that they couldn't decide on a president, so they elected me the second year to be president. I was the lowest common denominator, and they cooperated with me somewhat, for the most part. But that was an experience of trying to build consensus. It was hard, and sometimes it didn't work very well, but we moved on. And I have a tendency not to take opposition personally. If people say no to me, I thank them for telling me and move on, or figure out another way to do it. Or if somebody even insults me, I think, well, they must have misunderstood.
Well, that's probably a good approach to things. It keeps you able to keep moving forward on some issues.
I hope so.
So what are the kind of main issues that are going on in your district?
Well, transportation is probably the biggest overall, most commonly mentioned issue. My opponent, Tim Hugo, has voted, according to my research, against all the proposals to improve transportation and reduce congestion in Northern Virginia and in our district over the 10 years, and offered no viable alternatives. So that's where we are. We can look at how much is improved in 10 years. And he voted against the last proposal, the bipartisan transportation funding bill, which passed in spite of his no vote. And we're dealing with the funds now being generated from that to reduce congestion. And it was a great experience in a compromise. All too rare to have a compromise solution in legislation.
So you would have supported that bill had you been in the House of Delegates?
I would have. I've not liked every part of it. I think we can still tidy it up a little bit. The fining, a fine on my wife's Prius doesn't seem very appropriate.
That hybrid tax really has got people up here exercised, I'll say that.
Yeah, it targets Northern Virginia, and we're already being targeted by raising some more of our own money with extra sales tax. But it's all part of a compromise. You don't get everything, you have to give up something, but you come up with something.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, now, the other issue that was going on down in the last couple of sessions that seemed to create a great deal of conflict were issues surrounding women's rights, their reproductive rights specifically. Where do you stand on those kinds of issues?
Well, it's very upsetting to me that I thought we had accomplished a lot with women's rights over the last few decades, and now somehow they're being whittled away, women's rights to make their own health choices according to their own conscience, their doctor, and if they want to consult their they're a priest or a minister, fine. But to impose and take away their rights statewide doesn't seem fair at all. And especially harmful are the lower income women who were benefiting from all the health care that the Planned Parenthood clinics could offer, and yet those are being closed down. And I think it's very harmful and unfair.
Well, talking about health care as well, I mean, where do you stand on this proposed Medicaid expansion? The House of Delegates seem to have put in some kind of a committee or something to look at it, and hopefully they'll reach some kind of conclusion.
Right. Well, I'm certainly in favor of it. Right now, there's 400,000 people, by estimates that I keep seeing, of the lower income people that have no access to regular health care. Their only alternative is to wait until they're sick enough to go to the emergency room, where it's expensive, and sometimes it's really too late to return to good health or even survive. That's this really tragic part of it. So 400,000 people can be insured a year from now. They could have set it for January, that would be sooner.
Right.
And we will get reimbursements from the federal government for that coverage from tax money we've already paid from Virginia. So for the 6 months until it goes to effect, we're not benefiting from those funds. And it will actually overall reduce hospital costs. If emergency room services are not needed, and people have access to regular health care, they'll be healthier, our communities will be healthier, and overall, if you match all the pockets and budgets, it'll be a reduction in overall medical costs, or at least there'll be a control over the increases. That's more fair and honest.
Well, the other issue that I understand some people have had is with our current voter ID laws. That was another big issue down in the General Assembly, particularly this last year, with imposing photo ID requirements for next year, not this year, for next year. Do you think that this voter fraud allegation has any real validity to it, or how do you feel about all those types of bills?
I don't think it's valid. I haven't seen any example of any voter fraud attempted or accomplished. So it's a false issue, but it's a diversion from what could be other things that would be more important to work on. And it's a handicap, and really will make it harder for some people to vote who just don't seem to have a government ID, they don't have a driver's license. With all the alternatives you could have, someone last year was coming in, I forgot my voter cards. Well, just use your driver's license. That works, that's so handy. I mean, but to have just something special instead of the alternatives, where you could even use a utility bill with your address on it. And really, for the most part, our voters vote in their own home precincts, and the people that work there most often know the people, and we know each other, and it's like a community experience. It's not all strangers, trying to rip each other off. It just seems so unnecessary to have all this.
Well, I want to mention in the last 20 seconds or so that we have here, there was a Washington Post editorial challenging your opponent's ethics. Apparently he charges $40,000 or so to his campaign committee. Do you think the ethics laws in Virginia need to be increased? And you got 5 seconds to tell me.
Yes, I think so, absolutely. The reporting needs to be more extensive, just like what I had to report in declaring my economic interest and my wife's and anyone else in my household.
Okay. Well, we will leave it at that. I want to thank you very much, Jerry, for coming.
Thanks for letting me be here.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Too many women get hit by their boyfriends and husbands. Too many women are pressured into having unprotected sex. Half of the people in the world living with AIDS are women. It doesn't have to be this way. Together, we can change this reality. Let's strive for a world free of violence.
At Volunteers of America, we don't just give kids a way to stay off the streets. We give them the tools they need to reach their full potential. We don't just help the elderly receive needed care. We help them live life to the fullest. We don't just provide food for homeless individuals and families. We provide job training and placement so they can buy groceries. Volunteers of America is a national organization that for over 100 years has provided programs and services that allow people to overcome their challenges to become vital members of their community. At Volunteers of America, we don't just help people, we help people help themselves. Find out how you can support the programs that are working in your community. Contact Volunteers of America today. Call 1-800-899-0089.
Drivers face all kinds of distractions.
Guys, stop playing, no?
Before your wireless phone becomes one of them, stop. Drive safely. Keep your phone in easy reach and dial sensibly. In bad weather or traffic, call later and use a hands-free device. Remember, with wireless, safety is your call.
We're back to the Inside Scoop. Here again, your host.
Welcome to Inside Scoop, Virginia. I'm Bettina Lawton, your host. And we have with us now Bob Brink. He is a delegate at the House of Delegates in Virginia. He has been a delegate since 1998, and he's running again, and we're going to be asking Bob why. His district number is 48, but for those of you who don't go by numbers, he represents parts of Arlington County and Fairfax County. We're going to put his map up so people can see it. It's kind of a very long, squiggly kind of map. But Bob, I want to thank you for coming tonight.
Well, thank you. I'm glad to be here.
So now you're a delegate. What did you do before? Are you still doing something other than being a delegate? Tell us about yourself.
Well, prior to my election in 1997, for a number of years I was in the legislative process at the federal level. I was a member of the professional staff of a couple of different committees of the U.S. House of Representatives, and then for 4 years I was Deputy Assistant Attorney General for Legislative Affairs at the Department of Justice. So it was a kind of a natural progression for me to go from that to going to the legislature down in Richmond.
Now, why did you run initially? Because that you're going federal to state. I mean, what made you decide to run back?
Well, it was a couple of different factors. First of all, I think almost every staff person who works up on Capitol Hill at one time or another kind of gets they sit there and they say, I could do that, and so the opportunity presented itself. And in 1997, shortly after I left the federal government, I went down to Richmond and I served as legislative counsel for Don Beyer, who at that time was lieutenant governor, and I wanted to get a feel for the legislature down there so that sometime down the road I might be interested in running. Well, I loved it. It's much more human scaled in Richmond than it is at the federal level, and the seat that I now occupy opened up as my predecessor retired, and so I decided this is my chance to do it, and this is my time. So I ran, and I've enjoyed it.
Well, now things have changed a lot. I mean, I've just been an observer of this, but I seem to sense that there's a lot less of that Virginia gentleman kind of theory down in Richmond. It seems to have gotten a lot more antagonistic. Is that just an outsider's view?
Well, it's something that you kind of have to guard against at all time. The last thing in the world that anybody, Republican or Democrat, wants to become is like Washington in terms of interpersonal relationships, because that so deeply affects how much really gets done, and so we've managed to ward it off pretty well, I think. For the most part, it's still a pretty congenial atmosphere. As I said, it's much smaller and less under the limelight than Washington is, and so you're able to get things done, which is something that you can't say about D.C.
No, definitely you cannot. Well, why are you running this year?
Because a number of the issues that I'm concerned about are the front burner issues down in Richmond. I'm on 3 committees that are pretty central players in all of this. One of them is transportation, and all of us up here in Northern Virginia know what a crucial issue that is. I'm also on the Appropriations Committee, which handles the budget, which really sets the priorities for the Commonwealth, for for the next 2 years. And I'm also on the Privileges and Elections Committee, which handles issues of campaign finance, election law, and so on. And I think this is a very, very important issue for the kind of democracy we have.
Well, let's talk with the transportation. That was the first one you mentioned. So are you happy with the transportation bill that came out? Do you think it needs to be tweaked? What else do we need to be doing?
Well, for the most part, I'm very, very happy with it. If for no other reason than we finally did something about transportation. It's been over 25 years since we last had a comprehensive look at our transportation system. In that time, the problem has gotten worse and worse and worse. Anybody up here in Northern Virginia can attest to that. And we've just kicked the can down the road year after year after year. So finally this year we were able to come together on a consensus package. It has a lot in it for various people not to like. I, for instance, wasn't happy that we went into the general fund as deeply as we did. But everyone, I think, deserves a lot of credit for giving in somewhat. And I have to say, one of the people who deserves a good deal of credit for this is Governor McDonnell, because without him taking the leadership of the executive office, we wouldn't have accomplished this.
Do you think he could have done it earlier, or is this because this is his last year? Because that's a tax increase, as the Republicans would tell you, and that seems to be a pretty risky thing for somebody to do in his position.
I've wondered about whether it could have been accomplished previously. We went around and avoided the issue of needing new revenues in every possible way we could have. There was a proposal to fund transportation by selling off the state ABC stores. That went away. There were various other kinds of proposals which didn't grapple with the central issue, which is we need new revenues in order to fund the kind of transportation system that we need.
So what would you like to see added or changed, any kind of tweaks that you want to try and implement in the next session?
Well, there are a couple of items in there that we have to look at again. One of them was a tax on hybrid vehicles that really doesn't make much sense either in terms of the amount of money it would raise or in the impact that it would have on people who are trying to do the right thing by having non-fuel vehicles. And so I think we have to look at that. And as time goes by, I'm certain that there are going to be other elements of that package that we will have to look at. But it's a giant step to get this on the table, to get real revenues coming in, to get revenues here in Northern Virginia that where we'll tax ourselves, and the money that we raise here will stay here for local and regional projects, and that's very important.
Now, didn't I read, and maybe I'm wrong, but didn't I read that Bob Marshall, Delegate Marshall, has sued to prevent the funding of certain projects, claiming, because the whole keep the money here and allocate it in Northern Virginia said it had to deal with congestion. And I think I read something the other day that said he's now sued to say you can't fund these things, it doesn't deal with congestion.
Well, almost any year after every session you can start a sentence with Bob Marshall has sued.
Oh.
And so he contends, and I don't think that it has much basis, but he contends that the strictures of the law aren't being followed. I don't think that's the case. I think that the bill that we passed and the implementation of it will stand up just fine.
What do you think will happen? And this is prognosticating because we don't know. If we were to end up with the Attorney General as our governor, because as I recall, Attorney General Cuccinelli issued some last-minute legal opinion saying that this law was bad and we couldn't do it. Do you think that he will try to dismantle it?
That's one of the things that's at stake on November 5th, is whether or not we go forward with this transportation plan. The Attorney General tried to block its implementation at every single step through the legislative process. One of the most important elements of it, as far as I'm concerned, for the future economy of Northern Virginia is the Silver Line. He's said that he would like to stop the Silver Line in its tracks, even after it's partially completed. And so I would be very concerned about what Governor Cuccinelli could do just in terms of slow walking implementation and not getting behind it. If a governor isn't committed to something through the administrative and bureaucratic process, he can slow it down and toss sand in the works.
Okay, well, that's a cautionary prediction for us. Let's talk privileges in elections. That was your other one. Apparently, we are being overwhelmed with voter fraud in Virginia, such that the legislature decided we needed new restrictive voter identification rules. Are you on the side that is seeing fraud everywhere?
Well, one of the things that's lacking in this battle against voter fraud is any evidence of any significant voter fraud. There simply is none. The requirement that was put in for photo ID has no basis in terms of allaying fraud because that kind of fraud simply doesn't happen. And so you have to really question why it was put in. It has the effect of making it more difficult for eligible voters to vote, and I think that's the wrong way to go. What we ought to be doing is to be doing everything we can to set up an election system that allows and encourages the maximum number of eligible people to vote.
I always find it interesting that the very people who are willing to restrict our ability to vote, which is a constitutionally guaranteed right, absolutely are like, you can't possibly restrict my right to own a gun. It's sort of like, well, let's keep hands off of things if we're going to be consistent here, but there seems to be a huge disparity in what is constitutionally okay to do in one versus the other. Let me ask you in the last 30 or 40 seconds that we have here about the budget, because that was your other committee, appropriations. What's going to happen if this sequester doesn't get worked out? I mean, what's the effect on Virginia's budget going to be?
I'm very concerned about what is going to happen with the drawback of federal support, both directly and also what it does to the economy of Virginia, particularly Northern Virginia, because we are very dependent on the federal government. So what we need to do, and what we've started to take steps to do, is to diversify our economic base so as not to be so completely reliant on the federal government, go into more research and so on. And we're making steps along that way, but we have to do more.
Yeah, I think we do. I absolutely agree. Well, I want to thank you for coming by tonight to talk with us, Delegate Brink. Good luck. I know you're not going to have any trouble. Everybody who was running against you withdrew, apparently, or too formidable for anyone to run against. So good luck in the next session.
Well, thank you, Bettina.
Thanks for coming.
Okay, thanks for having me.